the YSL Mini Couture Clutch palette in the shade Stora Dolls. We're going to be doing a full review of this palette today. I have swatches, I have tons of comparisons to help you guys figure out if this is worth it, and of course a daylight application so you guys can see how I got this look. If you're interested, then keep watching. What's up, friends? Welcome back to my channel. I hope you all are doing well. I'm super excited today to do yet another review of one of the YSL Mini Couture Clutch palettes, number 100 Stora Dolls. If you are new here, welcome to my channel. My name is Sophia and I am a complete luxury beauty addict. I upload videos every single week. I talk a lot about YSL, Chanel, Dior, Tom Ford, even lots of Sephora brands. So if that is up your alley, then consider subscribing to my channel. Hit that subscribe button to join our fam. Because we have a lot of fun on this channel, we like to keep it real. And don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up if you like it. I always link all of the products in my videos in that description box down below. And without further ado, let's get into this review. All right, party people, let's dive into this beautiful palette from YSL Beauty. As I mentioned, this is number 100 Stora Dolls. And I think that this is the, if not one of the most popular colorways that came out in this particular palette line from YSL. I think that whenever brands come out with a neutral to slightly cool tone palette, we instantly are interested and want to hear all about it. Let me show you guys some close-ups and some swatches of this beautiful color story. The shades here, they have decent pigmentation, but they also have a nice softness to them. You're gonna see you get kind of a nice mix of like a satin shade, a deeper cocoa matte, and then you have the two shades in the palette that are a little bit more sparkly, add a little bit more impact. If you guys missed it, I did do an introductory video of this line telling you a little bit more about the formula, how it compares to other luxury brands, kind of just going into my thoughts about the line as a whole. So I can link that down below. I also have reviewed some other colorways for these palettes, so I'll link my playlist down below because I'm sure you're trying to decide between all of the colors because they're all super duper beautiful. In fact, I really love this formula. It says in the product description that it is enriched with coffee seed oil, sweet almond oil, and prickly pear oil from the community gardens of Orica for all day comfort and wear. And I have to agree, this is a very smooth, slightly creamy formula. So it looks very soft, very flattering on the lids. If you have dry eyelids or maybe more mature skin, I don't think you need to worry about these, but you still get decent impact and of course sparkle, just depending on the palette that you choose. Some of them have a little bit more sparkle than others. These are retailing for about $54 USD. I do think it's going to depend on which country you are in, what retailer you are purchasing from. This is a very international brand, so we are seeing these palettes pop up in a lot of countries. That being said, a lot of you guys are waiting for certain colorways to pop up in your country, or maybe to just even have these at a retailer that is based in your country. So because of that, friends, I have created a shopping guide that I'm constantly updating. I'm gonna be linking that down below because that's the biggest question I get about these is where can I buy them, Sophia? Where can I get this one colorway? So be patient, friends. I constantly update that shopping guide. And more importantly, make sure that you are subscribed to my channel and following me on Instagram because that's when I give you guys the updates of when I see these pop up at more retailers. Let's get into my favorite part, friends, which is the demo. I have a nice sunny day here so we can do a beautiful daylight application. The first shade I'm going to go into is this mid-tone one. I always like to start off when it is a smaller palette with more of like the mid-tone shade and then kind of work my way over to deeper shades for depth and sort of these more shimmery shades to add a little bit more like impact and highlight. So I'm going into right now this little satin shade right here, and I'll show you on my brush just how much pigment you can pick up. So I do recommend tapping off your brush because these can be very pigmented. And see how beautiful, soft, and satiny that shade is. Let's get that on the other eye as well. I am barely having to spread this across the lid. That's why I like these palettes so much. They're very soft to the touch, but you do want to tap off your brush, especially when you're going into the more shimmery shades, because they're shimmery and you will get fallout. Not any more than any other type of luxury brand, but that's just how it is. These give off a lot of pigment. I'm also going to take that same shade and apply it to the lower lash line. Very, very smooth and gentle. You really don't have to tug at your skin at all. And this is a nice basic medium tone shade, I really do think that you could just use that as a one and done. Like this could be your eye look. Next, I'm gonna go into the deeper cocoa shade right here. This is what you would consider to be a matte in the palette, but these mattes, because of the formula, they are very creamy, and so you can get a very nice soft look with them. I'm going in with this extremely wispy brush from Chikuhodo because I want to show you guys how you can get a very relatively soft look for day, but then you could also build it up for the evening. Because what I like about this color story is that it can have a very sultry, very sophisticated look. I typically reach for these types of palettes if I'm creating like a going out look, but you could just use these three shades if you wanted something very, very soft for the daytime. I'm like barely tapping my brush into this palette as well. You can see I picked up a little bit more on that first dip on that eye, but see how I was a little bit lighter handed on this eye, and you could create an even more subtle look. So I'm just doing this to show you guys how you can sort of get variances of depth with a single palette based off the application. Next up, I'm going to go into this shimmery shade right here, and we're using a weasel brush. If you guys are curious about the brushes that I'm using, I just did a whole brush related video, so I can link that down below. This particular brush is made with weasel hair, so it's great for working with these high shine shimmers. And this is what I love about these YSL palettes, is that most of them have one stunner shade just like this one that completely transforms the look. And as long as you are careful and you're using the right tools and tapping off your brush, you're not going to get a ton of fallout in the application. Like all of the shades always layer on top of each other very, very beautifully. So you can start off more subtle like I showed you with this shade, but then you can continue to kick it up a notch with every other shade that is in the palette. So I'll give you guys a little close up there of how beautiful and shimmery that is. You also can wet your brush. So that's another tip if you really want to kind of control the pigment and prevent fallout. Next, I'm gonna go into the lightest shade right here, and I'm gonna use this as a little highlight to my look. So applying that to the inner corner and kind of dragging it down to the lower lash line a bit. I always like a nice illuminated inner corner, especially, you know, if I'm gonna go a little bit more smoky. I think that using this lighter and brighter shade and using it to highlight different parts of the eye, especially the inside of the eye, I think that it is great for preventing your look from getting a little bit too heavy, maybe making your eyes look a little bit too dark, which because I'm very pale, I always want to avoid that. You also could easily use this lightest shade. I'll swatch it for you guys right here. You could use that as a really pretty one and done, just to kind of like cover your eyelid and, you know, blur any imperfections, brighten things up. You could easily do that as well. I am also going to use that little light shade right here, kind of as like a brow bone highlight. And these little spongy applicators, believe it or not, they work pretty well with these shimmer shades. I like to use them also for kind of like the inner corner. So let me show you this look right now before I go in with a little bit more of the cocoa brown. How nice and wearable it is. It's still soft. You guys can see you get a lot of shimmer here, but it's not chunky glitter or anything like that. Now let me show you, I'm gonna just apply a little bit more, like I said, of the cocoa brown kind of to the outer corner of the eye, so you can see how you can kind of build the look up for daytime. You're not going to get as much depth and pigment and like richness as maybe like a Pat McGrath or a Natasha Denona type of matte, because these are much softer. You can kind of think of these like the Natasha Denona cream to matte formula. Those shades are really good for blending. They're a little bit softer. They have that creamy touch. That is very similar to what this formula is like. So you can definitely build it up, but it really just depends on the application, how much you layer it, etc. You're not going to get like as much depth, but I don't really think that's what these palettes were designed for. I think these palettes are designed to be beautiful, wearable, everyday shades for the people out there that love luxury makeup. All right, friends, this is the final look. I will link all the products that I used on my face in the description box down below. I applied my favorite Chanel eyeliner. It's kind of like a mixture between a black and a brown, some mascara, and I also popped on one of my favorite YSL lippies. I'll put all the shades and everything once again in the description box, but this is the final look. I think it's very beautiful, very sultry, very neutral. I went a little bit more glam today, but like I said, you can go a little bit more lighter handed if you want something that's maybe a bit more everyday, a bit more appropriate for daytime. I hope that that application was helpful for you guys to see. Next up, we're gonna get into what is probably the most important part of this video, which is the comparisons, because this palette has a lot of lookalikes. So I'm gonna be doing some comparisons with Tom Ford, Chanel. I've got a lot of palettes right here to show you guys so that you can decide whether or not this is something that maybe you already have in your collection, and maybe you'll decide to get a different colorway from the YSL line. First up, we have a comparison with Tom Ford Nude Dip. Now the color stories are very similar. Nude Dip does have that one kind of silvery-ish shade, so that's probably the one that stands out as the most different. If you want something that's slightly more silvery, Nude Dip would be great. The biggest difference between these palettes is the formula. The formula, I think, is completely different. The Tom Ford Wet Dry formula, all of the shades have the same finish. They all have that kind of silky, airbrush, slightly shimmery type of finish. They all kind of blend together. I actually think if you're looking for something that is a little bit more effortless, if you're a beginner, if you're worried about blending and kind of how to create a look, I do think that Nude Dip is better. If you want a little bit more control, kind of like I did during the demo, where you can build up the depth in different ways, you can add more sparkle if you want to. If you want a little bit more versatility, then I think the YSL palette is better, because I think you're getting more differentiation between the finishes. Nude Dip is a classic and it's popular for a reason. It's very easy to use and it's very flattering on every single skin tone. Next up, we have Tom Ford Metal Lust. Now this is no longer available. I'm sorry, friends, but a lot of my subscribers have this palette. This palette, it's unlike the last Tom Ford palette that we chatted about. That was the Wet Dry formula. This is more so like traditional mattes and also very, very high shine metallic shimmers. This color story as a whole, it's a little bit more brown. It's a lot deeper than the YSL Stora Dolls. You are just getting a lot more impact from this. The YSL palettes are pigmented, but they're a little bit softer. I think they're probably maybe even a little bit easier to work with. The YSL one, it's a little bit more versatile in terms of the looks that you can create. Moving on to Dior, we have a classic soft cashmere from Dior. Now this one, the color story is pretty similar, but it leans a little bit more grayish, just a little bit more silver. So if you want something more on like the nude browner side of the spectrum, I think Stora Dolls is a little bit better for that. In the Stora Dolls palette, the shimmers, they're a little bit more glittery. They kind of sparkle and reflect the light a little bit more than soft cashmere. Here, you're getting more of like a smooth metallic, if that makes sense, as opposed to kind of like a glittery topper. I also like the fact that the soft cashmere, you have a differentiation between the shades, just like in Stora Dolls. I think that the formula in the YSL palettes as well, it just has a little bit more of that creamier touch. I'm not saying that it is like better or worse than soft cashmere. It's just a different formula. I like both of them. Dior did just recently reformulate their palettes, and I find that their mattes are a little bit drier than I would like. So kind of keep that in mind. If you're not a fan of the new Dior formula, maybe check out the new line from YSL. Speaking of new palettes from Dior, I have one that literally just launched. I just got it in the mail last night and I haven't even reviewed it yet. Make sure you are subscribed because this review is coming soon. This colorway is called Bal Masqué. It's very similar to soft cashmere, to be honest. So I wanted to show you guys a quick comparison right here. I have not reviewed this yet. This one is a little bit more brown toned compared to soft cashmere, so I think it's an even better matchup with the YSL Stora Dolls, but I actually have not worn this one yet, so I'm not gonna say too much. I mostly just wanted to show you guys some comparisons so that you can get as much info as possible in this review. Moving on to Chanel, this was another limited edition palette. I don't think you can get it anymore. This is called Brunet Rose, and it was from that tweed collection that they launched. What you're getting from Chanel usually is a lot of softness. I think that their shadows are a little bit less pigmented than the ones from YSL. YSL, you get, once again, a little bit more of that creaminess. Sometimes with Chanel shadows, I find that I'm kind of having to dig into the pan a little bit to pick up the shade. It really just depends on the palette. If you already have this palette, I don't necessarily think you need the one from YSL. I think the biggest difference, other than the fact that the Chanel formula tends to be a little bit softer, is the fact that in the Chanel, the shimmer shade is this like champagne-y peach color, and then in Stora Dolls, the shimmer shade is more so this silvery color. So I think that is the main difference. Here, you're getting a little bit more of that warmer champagne peach, and then in this one, it usually leans more silver just because that's like the brightest shade in the palette. Also from Chanel, I have a classic. This is Tissé Rivoli. This is gonna lean a lot more silvery. It's much more cool toned. I would say Stora Dolls, it's cooler, but it's a little bit neutral to cool. Tissé Rivoli, this is more so if you wanna go full into the cool tones, and even the darkest shade in the palette, I feel like it has just a hint of purple as well. And the lightest shade in the palette, it's much more white and brightening, whereas the Stora Dolls, it kind of all just leans more in the middle, more of like a brownie to cool tone nude. And the last one that I have here is the Wayne Goss Smoky Quartz palette. This gives you very similar vibes, but it does have a little bit more of a purple undertone to it. I don't think it's exact, I think it's different enough, but I wanted to show you guys a side-by-side comparison because you can get some similar vibes. You also have the glitter topper shade right here, which gives you a similar effect to what you get in the Stora Dolls, but it's a little bit more like ethereal, a little bit more like sparkly. It's very unique. I do have some reviews of this palette that I can link down below, but I just want to show you guys, this is definitely a little bit more of like purple undertones. Hi friends, before I share my final thoughts, I wanted to show you real quick what the eye look looks like after a full day of wear. It is past midnight right now. I'm about to go take my makeup off, so I've been wearing this makeup for a full day. I just want to point out, see how there is no creasing from these shadows at all, which is very impressive because it is it's a creamier formula. As I've said throughout this review, you still get tons of impact from the shadows. I would say the main thing is that I do see the shadow has traveled maybe a little bit down the eye here, and it's a bit hard to see on camera, but you can kind of see there is some glitter that has transferred onto the tops of my cheeks. As I mentioned before, you do get some fallout throughout the day, but I just wanted to show you that quick little wear test. Also, I wanted to quickly comment on how this compares against the Natasha Denona Glam palette. I didn't include this in the comparisons before when I filmed the video because this is a bigger palette, but I do want to let you guys know, if you have this palette, you can dupe the one from YSL. You don't really need it. It is going to be a different formula. This will be a little bit more impactful. I think the way you need to think about this is that when I use this palette, I'm kind of in a different mindset. I want more colors. I will take this with me if I have to get ready for like a wedding or a special event. If I want to like really create, be more of a makeup artist almost. I feel like that's what this palette is good for. It's also good if you want just one palette to rule them all. You're just looking for one palette. If you're looking for an everyday palette with this color story, or if you're somebody that just does legit the same look every single time, that's what the YSL palette is good for. So I just wanted to say that before we go and also show you how the makeup wore. All right, friends, those are all the comparisons that I have for you. I hope that they were helpful. I know that people are gonna ask me, which one of these palettes is your favorite? I guess the ones that I use the most are probably Soft Cashmere and Nude Dip. Maybe the one from Wayne Goss because I'm super fond of that palette. I think that they're all a little bit different, as you could see from the comparisons. I think the biggest thing I want to say about the YSL palette, because I do really like it, if you couldn't tell from the rest of this video, I think it's a really beautiful palette. I think the main thing you need to consider when thinking about all of these different palettes and which one might be best for you is, are you okay with a little bit of glitter sparkle? I'm already starting to get like a little bit of fallout. It isn't usually too bad, but I enjoy the sparkle. If you don't want any of that, I don't necessarily think that these palettes from YSL are the best for you, because almost every single one has a little glitter shade. If you want something that is maybe a little bit more like beginner, effortless, no fallout at all, go for the Tom Ford Nude Dip, because it's a very similar color story. Soft cashmere is great if you're looking for kind of like that bright pop of silver, because it does have that very metallic silvery shade in the palette. So that would be my recommendation to you. They're all really good palettes. There isn't one that's like better or necessarily my favorite. It really just depends on the look that I'm trying to create. But overall, I highly recommend this palette. I don't get any crazy creasing on my eyes when I wear this formula. It has really great longevity. The biggest thing is really just, do you enjoy having different finishes? Do you like the option of being able to build depth? Because I do. And are you okay with more of like a glitter finish for some of the shades? Those are my biggest recommendations, friends. I hope that this video was helpful. Highly recommend this. I don't really think that you need to pick this up if you already have even 2 of the palettes that I showed you guys in the comparisons. Maybe pick up a different color story from YSL, and I still have more reviews of more color stories of these palettes, so make sure you are subscribed to my channel. If you like this video, please don't forget to give me a thumbs up. I would very much appreciate that. And sound off in the comments down below. Let me know if you were able to get your hands on this one, because I've had so many people ask me about this palette and where they can get it. Help us out. Let us know what your experience has been, and let me know what you thought of this review. If you are not subscribed to my channel, consider subscribing to join our fam for more content just like this. And with that, friends, I hope that you see some beauty in your day, and I will see you in my next one. Goodbye.